Let's pray. Lord, we ask for your blessing and your guidance as we open your word. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Happy Sabbath, everyone. So I have our main study this Sabbath, and the subject I'd like to cover is Gamergate and the rise of the far right. Gamergate and the rise of the far right. In Aldertessa's Vespers that have been going on for some time now, something that has come up a few times is this concept of Gamergate. She says, it began with Gamergate. We need to understand Gamergate. And I had some level of exposure to Gamergate over the last few years, reading about it in odds and ends. But the connection between Gamergate and what she was covering, was the rise of the far right and the nature of the far right as being more expansive than just apostate Protestantism. The connection of Gamergate to that was not clear to me. So I looked into it, and of course, as I looked, that connection became solid. It became very clear. So that's what I'd like us to cover this morning. And I'll say, I have notes in front of me. I don't see the chat. So if you have any questions or comments, just open your mic and interrupt. But beyond that, I will be moving fairly quickly too, because we have a lot to cover in the time that we have allotted. So by way of introduction, just to further contextualize this subject of Gamergate and the rise of the far right, we have spoken about the significance of 2014. I remember at the beginning of the year, Aldertessa had a study where she was reviewing all these significant developments that we can identify in 2014, developments of prophetic significance. We can trace back important events in the development of the message in 2014, but we can also trace the development of the Sunday law movement, which again has been emphasized in recent studies as comprising of more than just apostate Protestants. Why is it important to understand the rise of the far right, the nature of the far right, and the subject we're going to cover today? Right? Almost all of us come from a Christian history, right? We've joined the Christian movement, and the people we have opposed within Adventism or within the movement, or the people who have opposed us, have been Christians. And the message has been framed largely within the context of Christianity, because it's been Christians that it has been addressing. So from that perspective, we have been living or existing in something of a bubble, because the world is not Christian. Even Christendom, the West, is experiencing an age of post-Christianity, right? Is the term religiosity, right? But we have tended to view, because of this bubble, this lens through which we have existed and have been interacting, we have tended to view the broader world narrowly. We've tended to view the scope of prophecy in a way that's much more narrow than much more narrow than represents the reality in the world, right? There's a tendency to see Christianity, apostate Protestantism and Christianity more broadly as being the cause or the source of the world's problems with, sexism, racism, homophobia, the forms of evil that we're principally concerned with now at the end of the world. But we need to break out of this narrow perspective and see that the main threat in the United States and in the world more broadly is not apostate Protestantism, it's not the evangelicals, it's not Christianity. Right? When we look at the United States, they are a threat and they are on the scene. Right? We've covered the history of Jerry Falwell and his companions and the work that they have done to forward dominionism. Right? That is certainly a part of the picture. But what we need to realize is that they are more the old guard. They are more the older generation. But as you observe, if you're online, if you're on social media, if you're even watching the news, what you will see is that the people pushing the far-right agenda of intolerance, of discrimination, of rolling back the rights of the most vulnerable people among us, it's not this old guard that is, they're still there. But it's not them that are at the forefront of this, or who are the most, I don't want to say the most impactful. They're not the only ones that are responsible, that are pushing this forward. They have played a crucial role in supporting Donald Trump and again, they're playing a key role in the attacks. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. I'm saying that this older cohort, they're still on the stage of action, but they're not the only ones. They're arguably, in some instances, not even the most significant players. This new generation, which Elder Tess has been highlighting, it's younger, mostly young men, and it is not Christian. It's actually mostly atheistic. It is libertarian in terms of their political perspective, how they treat issues of freedom versus rights, right? It's this toxic conception of freedom, which says freedom at all costs, even if it is harmful, even destructive to other people, right? And of course, that's been a very important concept to understand: freedom versus freedom versus equality. They're younger, they're atheistic, they're libertarian in their political ideation, and they're also quite rapidly anti-feminist, right? Now, all of these things, libertarianism, anti-feminism, at least libertarianism and anti-feminism, we can see how the evangelicals come to it through their interpretation of the Bible. But with this younger cohort, you have, with this new generation, you have these people coming to the same conclusions about freedom and equality, coming to the same conclusions about civil rights and minorities, coming to the same conclusion about the place of women in society and how to treat issues affecting women, they're coming to the same conclusions as the old guard, but they're coming through different means, right? Whereas the evangelicals will tell you gender equality is wrong because it's contrary to the patriarchal biblical order. They argue for, the younger generation would say gender equality is wrong because evolutionary biology says we are different. And if we go against the order established by our evolution, well, that will lead to the disintegration and the breakdown of society, which we are seeing, right? They come to the same conclusions, but they come to it from different perspectives, different points of reasoning. So that, of course, that presents a challenge for us, which is why it's important for us to broaden our perspective, broaden our scope, to come out of our Christian bubble and take in the spectrum of actors that are involved in bringing about the Sunday law, right? It's important that we do that because the Nethinim that we are going to be seeking to reach very soon, when the harvest of the Levites, but the Nethinim who are existing in a post-Christian world, we need to broaden our scope so we can better connect with them and better reach them. I hope that makes sense. So as we broaden our scope, as we come out of our Christian bubble, as we take off our narrow Christian lens and begin to broaden our scope of view of the Sunday law movement, you can trace its development. You can trace its development, and you can trace its character, you can trace its development. But as you trace its development, certain events come into focus. And one event that you have to understand, that has to be part of the picture if you're going to understand the rise of the far right, is Gamergate. So you have Gamergate. And when did Gamergate take place? It took place in 2014. All right, so that's our introduction. I'll just put Gamergate over here. I'll just highlight key actors and concepts on the whiteboard as we go along. Right, so you cannot understand the rise of Trump or the radical right-wing nationalism in the United States without understanding Gamergate. What is Gamergate? I'll read a Wikipedia definition. And then I will go into its history and start to trace its development. The events leading up to Gamergate, which took place which began in 2014 properly, and how it connects to Trump's campaign in 2016 and the rise of the far right. So Gamergate. According to Wikipedia, Gamergate was an online harassment campaign initially conducted through the use of the hashtag Gamergate that promoted sexism and anti-progressivism in video game culture. Beginning in August 2014, the campaign targeted women in the video game industry, notably game developers Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu, and feminist media critic Anita Sarkeesian. The harassment campaign included doxing. What doxing is when people who don't like you or are trying to victimize you, they find your private information, whether it's your address or whatever private information on you they can find, and then they publish it on online forums that are hostile to you, online forums where people who want to threaten you and maybe harm you can gain that information. So it's a very dangerous practice. So the harassment campaign included doxing, threats of rape, and death threats. Gamergate is viewed as a right-wing backlash against progressivism. Gamergate proponents, or Gamergaters, have stated that they were a social movement, but they had no leaders or manifesto. And statements claiming to represent Gamergate have been inconsistent or unfounded. Gamergate is described as a culture war over cultural diversification, artistic recognition, feminism in video games, social criticism in video games, and the social identity of gamers. Many supporters of Gamergate oppose the increasing influence of feminism on video game culture. Gamergate led figures both inside and outside the gaming industry to focus on methods of addressing online harassment, ways to minimize harm, and prevent similar events. So Gamergate was this massive online harassment campaign of female game developers, or female game developers and journalists and media critics, right? And it so we'll speak more about that. I think the definition speaks for itself. We will unfold Gamergate in greater detail. I just thought I'd read that definition first, because I don't doubt that to some of us it's just a word, and there's no, maybe this is our first time even hearing of it, or maybe when Elder Tess mentioned it, that was the first time you heard it. So that's what Gamergate was. It was an online harassment campaign against women involved in the gaming industry, women who were speaking out against sexism in the gaming industry, trying to change the culture of the gaming industry, and of which the gaming industry is largely male, very patriarchal, very few guardrails against rampant misogyny, right? From the companies that produce the games to the very games themselves, the themes and the tropes that they present and what they're promoting. So it's while it began within the gaming industry, it quickly mushroomed into part of this broader culture war that's taking place between left and right, progressivism and conservatism. So I'll speak some more about Gamergate and all the names that we've mentioned, but I'd like to talk about its prelude, some of the events leading up to it. And of course, familiar names are going to pop up. Stephen Bannon. Stephen Bannon, we know Bannon was a key figure in Trump's campaign in 2016. He is one of the key figures in the rise of the far right, and he served early on in Trump's administration. So over the years, there's been a lot of information, at least in our studies, on Steve Bannon, but he's also a key figure in this Gamergate controversy. So come to 2005. 2005, Bannon started working for a gaming company. So it says there, Bannon at IGE. 2005, Bannon started working for this video game company based in Hong Kong. It's called IGE, which is Internet Gaming Entertainment. Bannon had held a number of careers over the course of his life. He was in the Navy. He became a Hollywood producer. He worked for Goldman Sachs, the investment firm, and this was his latest venture in 2005. He started working for IGE. Now, when you look at what IGE was, there's no, the gaming industry is a massive industry worth billions upon billions of dollars. So IGE, it did not make video games, but what it did was, there's a very popular video game called World of Warcraft. Anyone with teenagers maybe in the home, you probably have heard of it. It's still very popular today. It's called World of Warcraft. And this World of Warcraft, it's an online game where you play as a character of your choice, and you're playing with people from all over the world. And in this game, you can fight battles, form teams with people from all over the world, fight battles against people from all over the world. And in this game, you can, as you play the game, you earn gold. This is in the game, you earn gold. And with that gold, you can buy different things in the video game, such as weapons or armor and so on. So what this company, IGE, did is that it employed hundreds of cheap Chinese laborers to play the game. So they would play the game and they would earn gold, the gold that can be used to purchase prizes within the game. And they would sell this gold, this video game gold, for actual money, right? So what this did is that it created a way for players with more money to essentially get ahead of everyone else, get ahead of those who are just playing the game honestly, right? If they had more money, they could buy the prizes rather than putting in the hours of actual gameplay it would otherwise take to actually win those prizes. And this was a serious business. Bannon convinced Goldman Sachs to invest $60 million in it in 2005. Right, so it was a very serious business. But many within the gaming community itself, many of the actual players felt that this was unfair. And they began to organize on various online platforms and forums to begin to put pressure on gaming companies to stop this practice and to ban this practice. And they were very effective in the pressure that they put on the gaming companies. And the companies eventually caved to the pressure, and they banned this practice of gold mining, right? And it effectively killed Bannon's business. So Bannon moved on from IGE, but this experience, seeing how these gamers mobilized and essentially shut down, multi-million-dollar enterprise, he never forgot that. Right, and reading a quote here, it says, the experience awakened him to the power and potential of what he called ruthless white males who spent all their time on the internet. Right, so there's a commonly understood profile for the gamer, typically male, typically someone who struggles in terms of their socialization and in terms of their vocal progress in real terms in the world, and then they turn to video games as an escape, right? So he called these ruthless white males who spent all their time on the internet, and he felt that if their drive and enthusiasm could be harnessed, right, the same drive and enthusiasm that shut down gold mining in video games. He felt that if that could be harnessed and turned towards politics, they would become a very powerful force. But his challenge was, at the time, this demographic was not interested in politics. You know, they were in the video games, and video games was their escape from the world, by and large. So there was little interest in coming out of that escape to come back into the real world, which, you know, would say they felt had not been very kind to them, right? So Bannon started thinking about ways to politicize this element, right? And his vehicle for doing so would be Breitbart News. Okay, so we come to 2007. And here Breitbart is founded. So Breitbart is founded in 2007. Bannon was a founding member of Breitbart News, and the company takes its name after one of the founders, who was Andrew Breitbart. And what Breitbart News is, it's still there. It's a far-right news, opinion, and commentary site. Right, so founded in 2007. In 2012, in March 2012, the founder, after whose name you know, the website takes its name, Andrew Breitbart, he died. And Bannon became executive chairman of Breitbart that same year. So we come to 2012. And this is when Bannon becomes executive chair. At Breitbart. Breitbart was always right-leaning in its approach, but under Bannon's leadership, Breitbart's editorial tone became more nationalistic, and it also became increasingly friendly to the extreme right. In 2016, Bannon would declare Breitbart as being the platform of the alt-right, far-right, or extreme right. So while at Breitbart, Bannon began to make efforts to attract these angry and abusive gamers, right? This element that he had encountered through the controversy with IGE, he began to make efforts to attract them to Breitbart and radicalize them to right-wing nationalism. And his bridge between them and the right wing was Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos. I think I'll show a picture of him. I have a picture of him here. Right, so this is the fellow. This is Milo Yiannopoulos. So Bannon hired Yiannopoulos to be Breitbart's tech editor in 2014. And Yiannopoulos would work for Breitbart from 2014 to 2017. So who was Milo Yiannopoulos? I'll put here in 2014. Milo Y. using up all my space. Who was Milo Yiannopoulos? Milo Yiannopoulos, he was a popular political commentator, speaker, and news editor. He was a news editor associated with the alt-right and the manosphere. We spoke about the manosphere, and we'll have opportunity to speak about it some more in the future. He wrote. He was an incendiary figure. He said very inflammatory things against Islam, against feminism, against social justice, against political correctness, the type of incendiary and really sort of thuggish rhetoric that has become the norm post-Trump. So he was one of those early figures, who embodied this approach. So Yiannopoulos, he comes to Breitbart in 2014, and he is Bannon's bridge between the gamers and the far right. Yiannopoulos' articles that he wrote for Breitbart, you can see how he acted as the bridge. His articles would take something of a contradictory attitude towards the gamers, labeling them as shut-ins and social outcasts on the one hand, but also as powerful individuals taking a stand against corruption within their community, right? The feeling at the time was that feminism and the efforts to make games more wholesome and equitable in their representations of women, that was a corruption that was entering into their community and seeking to destroy it and to destroy everything that was fun about video games. So he framed them as individuals taking a stand against corruption that was seeking to destroy the community. That all they wanted was a fair press in the gaming community, right? Because again, with Gamergate, it was a backlash against gaming journalism, which they felt was pandering to leftist priorities such as gender equality, representation of minorities, right? And they felt that it was prejudiced against them, who maybe say the historic gaming community. So they wanted fair press in the gaming community. He framed them as natural libertarians who were taking a stand against cultural Marxism and the tyranny of the left, right? He reframed their gripes, which started out as issues surrounding representation in video games, to being issues about cultural libertarianism and economic nationalism. He kind of wove these things together. So he was that bridge to bring this cohort of again mostly men, white men, had not had a good go in their time in the world, right? And channeling their anger and their frustration into right-wing politics, getting them to identify with the priorities of right-wing nationalism, getting them to connect their problems with those of the right-wing nationalists and to begin to identify with right-wing nationalist priorities. I have a note here. So in 2014, Yiannopoulos emerged as a lead actor in the Gamergate controversy through his work with Breitbart. He became one of the most vocal of Gamergate supporters. Yiannopoulos employed Gamergate as a basis for online attacks on women And his role in Gamergate allowed him to become one of the central figures in the mainstream growth of the alt-right. So 2014, you have Milo Yiannopoulos at Breitbart, and you also have Gamergate. Those years ago, I remember Milo Yiannopoulos quite distinctly, and I remember the role that he played in the rise of the far right. But what I had not, the piece of the puzzle that I didn't have at that time, that I didn't see, was his connection with Gamergate. So that's abundantly clear. That's abundantly clear now. So we come to Gamergate. We come to Gamergate proper. Anita Sarkeesian. Let's introduce that name. Anita Sarkeesian. I have a picture of her that I will just share briefly. Right, so this is Anita Sarkeesian. So who was she? She is rather, a Canadian-American feminist media critic and a public speaker. She is the founder of Feminist Frequency, which is a website that hosts videos and commentary analyzing portrayals of women in the popular culture. Right. So in May of 2012, Sarkeesian announced that she was starting a crowdfunding campaign for a series of videos that she was going to do. And these videos were called Tropes versus Women in Video Games. I'll put here 2012, I'll just put Tropes v. Women. Tropes versus Women. Okay, tropes versus women in video games. So she launched a crowdfunding campaign. She raised much more money than she was asking for. And she launched the video series. And she spoke about her love for video games. But she also spoke about how the gaming community had a bad side. Many games tend to reinforce and amplify sexist and downright misogynist ideas about women. That's a quote from her, right? So he says, many games tend to reinforce and amplify sexist and downright misogynist ideas about women. So her feeling was that considering the increasingly central role video games play in our society, these things, their impact cannot be ignored. It has to be tackled and addressed. Right, and I just have some notes here about some of the videos online about it, actually, where she's talking about, I guess the popular video game tropes that demean women, the damsel in distress, or the the sexualization of women in video games, you know, and so on. She deals with all of that and unpacks it, and, you know, and dissects it, and really lays bare that, you know, the gaming culture needs to do better. So here she is in 2012 with this series, and the trouble started very soon after that. An army of hateful trolls woke up, they found each other online on the internet, and they launched a crusade of harassment targeting Sarkeesian. But not only Sarkeesian, some of the other women that we're going to talk about. And their feeling was that video games was something of a last bastion for men, and that even that was being taken away from them by these feminists. So what is a troll? What is an internet troll? If you're on social media, you by any length of time, you've come across trolls, I'm sure. A troll is internet slang for a person who posts inflammatory, insincere, digressive, extraneous, or off-topic messages in an online community, such as social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., a news group or a news forum, chat room, or in video games, with the intent of provoking readers into displaying emotional responses or manipulating their perceptions. This is typically for the troll's amusement or to achieve a specific result, such as disrupting a rival's online activities or manipulating a political process. Even so, internet trolling can also be defined as purposefully causing confusion or harm to other users online for no reason at all, right? So you have this army of trolls that were essentially, they were activated, they were triggered by Sarkeesian's work, and they mobilized a campaign of harassment against her. Then we come to 2013. We'll introduce another woman, Zoe Quinn. Zoe Quinn. And I have a picture of her too. And it's in connection with Zoe Quinn that Gamergate really took off. So that's her. So who was Zoe Quinn? She was an independent games developer. And in 2013, she released a title called Depression Quest. She made a video game called Depression Quest. And this was a text-focused game designed to convey the experience of depression through a series of fictional scenarios. And it was based in part on her own experience with depression. So the game received positive reviews in the gaming media, but it faced backlash from online gamers who disliked its departure from, you know, the typical gaming formats, which emphasized violence and skill and competition, and who opposed the intrusions of people like Quinn and like Sarkeesian into gaming culture. So Quinn was subjected to several months of harassment after the game's release. She was sent rape and death threats, and she documented the harassment she received and spoke openly to the media about it. And this led to even more intense abuse against her, including the posting of her home address online. She was doxxed, and she ultimately fled her house out of fear for her safety. So this is in 2013, and you come to 2014. The controversy that would come to be known as Gamergate began when Quinn's former boyfriend, and this was like the tipping point when things exploded. Quinn's former boyfriend after their breakup, began to accuse her of having cheated on him by sleeping with a reporter from a video game magazine in order to get positive reviews for her Depression Quest game. So this ex-boyfriend later revealed, and he posted these accusations in a blog publicly, in a public forum. It was posted on 4chan, right? I know 4chan has come up. So the ex-boyfriend, he later revealed that he had no evidence for this sexual conflict of interest. And it was also revealed that the journalist who he said Zoe Quinn had the affair with, that he had not written a review of any of Zoe Quinn's games up to that point. Nonetheless, the online trolls used the ex-boyfriend's blog to accuse Quinn without evidence of trading sex for professional advancement. And a link to the blog was posted on 4chan, where many users who had previously been critical of Depression Quest had created threads and posts, right? And this led to renewed attacks on Quinn. So here, 2014, the attack, the escalation seen in the attack on Zoe Quinn, this is what would be called Gamergate. And there's one more person I will introduce. This is Brianna Wu. This is Brianna Wu. And who was she? Brianna Wu was another independent game developer. And in mid-October 2014, she posted tweets that were critical of the Gamergate's misogyny, right? So you have this tidal wave of attacks and abuse on Zoe Quinn that by that time had been termed Gamergate, right? That this whole fiasco, I'm telling Gamergate, you know, of course, the Gamergaters are framing themselves as fighting for ethics in games journalism, right? And fighting against the political correctness of games journalists that was seeking to, you know, change the culture of gaming, right? While the games journalists would say they were making it more, they were fighting for it to become more inclusive, the Gamergaters would say they were destroying it. So Brianna Wu, this controversy is boiling over, and she posts tweets that were critical of the Gamergate's misogyny. And she became a target thereafter. Her home address and other identifying information was posted on 8chan. 8chan is the more extreme sort of cousin of 4chan, as retaliation for mocking Gamergate. She became the target of rape and death threats on Twitter and elsewhere. And she also had to flee her home with her husband. As of 2016, she was still receiving threats in such volume that she employed a full-time staff to document them. Right. So this was Gamergate, began in 2014, this online harassment campaign. But we want to talk about its scope and significance, particularly as we approach 2016 and Donald Trump's campaign. So these attacks on Sarkeesian on Quinn, on Wu and others. Many journalists and political analysts, there are a lot of articles on it now, recognize this as marking a cultural shift. It was a key marker in what some people consider the decline of civil discourse, right? What do you mean when you say the decline of civil discourse? There's the idea, you know, that Trump brought about the decline of civil discourse. He soured and muddied the quality and nature of politics, right? By his brashness, his overt racism and sexism, his open insults, and using open insults and jokes to sort of stir up the worst elements in people and to use that to mobilize them. People see Trump as the beginning of that. Of course, Trump comes along in 2016, but really he was not. That whole template, that whole approach and methodology, it had been presaged by Gamergate, right? Trump was not the origin of it. He was following the Gamergators' template, right? A template that had seen sort of like, that began to fully flourish 2 years before he would announce his campaign and run for politics in 2016. So Gamergate is understood by many as being the point at which you see this culture shift and this decline of civil discourse. So I'll speak about their methods. So internet trolls, predominantly anonymous posters, they realized that they could work together using online platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit to try to destroy the lives of people who disagreed with them. On message boards and social networks, they created a language to fit their ideology. They called people like Sarkeesian were called social justice warriors, right? You may have heard this expression before. It's a pejorative, it's an insult. Or SJWs for short. So what is a social justice warrior? It's essentially a derogatory term for radical feminists, right? According to the trolls, instead of burning bras and abandoning their homes, which is what feminists were accused of in previous decades, a social justice warrior wanted to force the video game industry to adhere to new politically correct standards that they believe will ultimately ruin everything that makes video games fun, right? So this language, this rhetoric, you know, you hear it prominently in 2016 and onwards, but it actually began with Gamergate. So I have a quote here from a news article. It says, Gamergate was all about, again, was speaking to their methods. The methods that we see Gamergaters employ, which we see being employed by Donald Trump in his rise and in the rise of the far right, 2016 and onwards. Gamergate was all about disguising a sincere wish for violence and upheaval by dressing it up in hyperbole and irony in order to confuse outsiders and make it all seem less serious. As the author noted to me, Gamergate was fueled in part by online extremists who initially bonded with young men in gaming communities over what started as ironic humor and jokes about the Holocaust, jokes about racial differences and whatnot. And over time, all those things became less joking. This tactic was a deliberate strategy that formed the core of the alt-right playbook. And years after Gamergate, media outlets continue to fall for it. Right? So Gamergaters, they are attacking the political correctness of the social justice warriors, the radical feminists who are seeking to change gaming culture. And they do so by being open and overt and offensive, right? About, telling jokes about the Holocaust, telling jokes about racial differences and the inferiority of certain races, the inferiority about women. And they're doing this supposedly as a way of needling the social justice, trying to get a rise out of them, trying to get a reaction out of them, and they laugh about it. But over time, this rhetoric becomes less and less joking, and it becomes more and more serious, right? And this article is pointing out that strategy, it's part of the alt-right playbook for how they radicalize people. So I have it's a longer quote from a news article, but it lays out this process really well. It lays out this process really well. All right, so I've been going on for an hour. I just need maybe 15 more minutes of your time before we can close. So this quote says, "Trolling distorts reality in order to trick you into dismissing its message. One of the most significant and pernicious ways that members of the alt-right use trolling is to create a sincerity-proof chamber of distortion surrounding what their actual message is. They do this by pretending that what they're really doing is satirically spoofing how progressives and members of the media view conservatives. Things get really confusing really fast. For example, say I Photoshop a picture of Hillary Clinton so that she's being chased by rabid wolves. You come along and claim that my image is alarming and sexist. I might then claim that the joke's on you because my image was really just a way to bait and skewer liberal hysteria and their media's hyperbolic, distorted image of how the alt-right treats women, and Clinton in particular. And by reacting to it and getting upset, you fell for it, proving that liberals are overly sensitive crybabies who habitually whine about trivial or non-existent issues. Consequently, you might feel like a fool for having taken the joke seriously. You might also be more likely to eye roll and dismiss the next obviously sexist meme you see being shared online. You might even encourage other people to ignore it too, assuming it was crafted by someone attempting to mock liberals for taking trolls too seriously. And all the while, my picture of Clinton and the wolves and many more like it continue to promote violence against women and hatred of Clinton, which was, of course, my real goal all along. All of which is to say that it can be extremely difficult for the average person to pass alt-right trolling from sincere alt-right messaging. If you fall for it, you're catering to the movement's ostensible perception of left-leaning citizens or even moderate citizens as being histrionic. But if you try to play along with the alt-right's hyperbole by intellectualizing, for example, by painting it primarily as cultural commentary, dismissing it as trolling, or simply ignoring it altogether, you risk glossing over actual dangerous messages, racist, misogynistic, bigoted, and violent symbolism and language, right? So today, the far right routinely uses these methods to attack their political opponents and what they describe as political correctness. So you have between 2014 and there's an overlap already between Gamergaters and men's rights activists, online misogynists, right? Who use many of the same online forums, Reddit, 4chan, 8chan, to meet with each other and essentially exchange notes and support each other in their thinking. You have these Gamergaters and these men's rights activists, these online misogynists, connecting online. You also have Breitbart and Steve Bannon and Milo Yiannopoulos also working to politicize this contingent, right? To politicize this element, to get them, to open their eyes to political issues, to get them involved in politics. And then you come to 2016, Donald Trump comes along and he is their hero, right? They were all misogynists and they saw Trump as their hero who shared their misogyny. They relished his attacks on political correctness and his willingness to denigrate women who he felt had crossed him, right? And again, the culture and tone and methods that Trump would popularize did not originate with him. They originated with these Gamergaters, these men's rights activists and online misogynists who mobilized themselves to support him. So Trump was using their playbook, he was not using theirs. Right? Trump was using their playbook rather. They were not using his. Trump did not originate it, they did. He just, yeah, he was there at the right time to make use of this model that had preceded him, that was already there for him to exploit. Okay, so in closing, in summary, we have Gamergate in 2014 as another one, as one of the many events of prophetic significance that we can trace back to 2014, events that have that are important when seeking to understand the development of the Sunday Law movement in our dispensation, in our history. And it's important because in Gamergate, you see a profile. You see a profile of this new generation of right-wing conservatives. They're not the old guard that were evangelical. They are atheistic. They're atheistic, they're libertarian, they're nationalistic, they're rapidly anti-feminist, and they're very tech savvy, right? These are the people on the scene now at present. They're the ones that are propelling the advancement of the Sunday Law movement. And so in 2014, we see not only them, we see not only their profile, but we also see their methods. The methods that have been used from 2014 right up to the present, that were brought to the political stage in 2016, and that have continued to be used right up to the present. So I will close there. That's our overview of Gamergate and its significance when we think of the rise of the far right. Let's close with prayer. Lord in heaven, we thank you for your word, and we thank you for the understanding that you're giving us. Help us to to come out of our bubble and to take in the full picture of what is developing, of the Sunday law movement that is developing. And by doing so, may you equip us to better reach not just the Levites, but maybe even more so the Nethinim who are living in a post-Christian world, but who must make sense of these things that pertain to their eternal salvation. Please bless us and keep us this Sabbath, for we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.